At True Echo, we tell stories that dig deeper than headlines, moments where pride meets humility, where arrogance meets honor, and where one choice can change everything. Today's story begins with a single soda can at the tomb of the unknown soldier, and ends with a lesson that echoes far beyond Arlington's gates. The soda can hit the pavement with a dull metallic thud, the sound swallowed by the heavy summer air hanging over Arlington National Cemetery. A small splash of sticky cola fanned outward, catching the sunlight before it splattered across the mirror-polished black boots of the sentinel. The crowd, hundreds of tourists, veterans, and families, froze. A collective gasp cut through the oppressive heat, and heads swiveled toward the source of the disruption. Standing there, grinning like he'd just pulled the greatest prank of his life, was Tyler Grayson. 13 years old, sun-kissed California skin, hair styled with surgical precision, and wearing sneakers worth more than most people's rent. His phone was already raised, camera rolling, as though he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Tyler expected laughs. Maybe a few impressed murmurs from the teenagers nearby. At the very least, he thought he'd see the guard flinch, maybe even break formation. He didn't get any of that. Ethan Caldwell, the tomb guard, didn't even blink. His chin remained level, his mirrored sunglasses fixed forward. The rhythmic, measured pace of his ceremonial march didn't falter. But behind those lenses, Ethan's eyes burned. Not with embarrassment, Ethan had faced live gunfire, roadside bombs, and the death of his own brother without breaking stride. This was something else. A different kind of insult. And the weight of it began to press on the air around them. The Grayson family had been easy to spot even before this moment. Jonathan Grayson, tech CEO, millionaire several times over, had been standing off to the side in a designer suit, firing off emails without so much as a glance toward the ceremony. Lauren, his wife, had busied herself studying the cemetery map with an air of mild annoyance, her oversized sunglasses reflecting the marble tomb before her. Tyler, wedged between them, had radiated boredom since the moment they arrived. "This is so lame," Tyler had muttered earlier, loud enough for strangers to turn their heads. "Why are we watching some guy walk back and forth in the heat? I could be in an air-conditioned museum right now." Jonathan hadn't even looked up from his phone. Lauren's half-hearted, "Just enjoy it, sweetie. It's important," had rolled right off him. To Tyler, this was just another content opportunity, a backdrop for his followers on TikTok and Instagram. He'd watched the guard for a few minutes, smirk growing, until his gaze had fallen on the half-empty soda can he'd been holding. In that moment, an idea sparked. He whispered into his phone, "Yo, this is gonna be epic," and stepped closer to the rope line that marked the sacred boundary. When he flicked the can forward, the crowd's reaction had been instant. Veterans stiffened. Parents pulled children back. A group of high schoolers stopped whispering and stared. Ethan's jaw tightened just barely, so small a movement most would miss it, but it was there. He had trained for years to master the art of stillness under provocation. But there were lines, and Tyler was inching toward one. "Yo," he didn't even blink, Tyler crowed, angling his camera toward Ethan's boots. "Look at that mess I made. This is gonna blow up online." An elderly man in a faded Vietnam veteran's cap leaned toward his wife, his voice low but cutting. "Kids got no respect." Tyler was oblivious. He stepped closer to the rope, leaning forward like he was about to tap the guard on the shoulder. "Hey, soldier boy," he called out. "You gonna clean that up, or what? Bet you can't even talk." No one laughed. The glares were thick enough to choke on, but Tyler was high on the attention, even if it was hostile. That's when Jonathan finally looked up. "Tyler, what are you doing? Get back here." "Relax, Dad," Tyler shot back without lowering his phone. "They work for us, right?" It was the last straw. The rope line was sacred, crossing it was an offense so serious that even tourists who didn't know the rules seemed to understand instinctively. But Tyler didn't hesitate. He stepped over it. The murmurs in the crowd spiked. Phones came out. People began recording from multiple angles. Tyler strutted toward Ethan, raising his phone for a selfie. "Yo, me and statue guy, this is gonna get 1,000,000 likes." Ethan's training screamed at him to remain motionless, but something deep in his chest twisted. He saw Tyler, but he also saw Michael, his older brother, laughing in the sun 1 week before his deployment to Afghanistan, the same week Ethan had promised he'd take care of him when he got back. Michael had never made it home. Tyler's phone was inches from Ethan's face when the guard moved, fast, precise, and without a wasted motion. His hand shot out, plucking the phone from Tyler's grip like it was nothing. In the same movement, he let it drop to the pavement. The crack of glass was sharp in the heavy air. Tyler froze, mouth falling open. You broke my phone. That's a $2,000 phone." Ethan had already returned to his post, his face once again a mask of impassivity. But the crowd had changed. The shift was electric. Some people hid smiles behind their hands, others exchanged approving nods. From the far side of the crowd, a woman in a Marine Corps lapel pin spoke just loud enough to carry. "I buried friends here. That boy should be ashamed." Tyler's bravado faltered, but before he could react, Arlington security began pushing through the gathering. At their head was Inspector Laura Bennett, a woman whose reputation for zero tolerance toward disrespect preceded her. "Sir," she said firmly to Jonathan, "your son just committed assault on a federal officer and trespassed on restricted federal property. You're lucky the Sentinel didn't do more." Jonathan bristled, his voice rising. "Assault? He's a kid. This is outrageous. Do you know who I am?" Laura didn't even blink. "I know exactly where you are, Mr. Grayson, and here, rank and money mean nothing." The hashtag Arlington Kid was already spreading like wildfire online. And the storm that had begun with a single soda can was about to engulf not only Tyler, but his entire family. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice through. Even Tyler, who had been riding high on his manufactured swagger minutes before, seemed to feel it pressing in from all sides. Arlington wasn't like a mall food court or a basketball court where a scene could earn you clout. Here, every step you took meant walking across ground heavy with sacrifice. And the crowd, silent, disapproving, unmoving, wasn't just watching. They were judging. Jonathan's phone buzzed furiously in his pocket. He ignored it, too busy squaring off against Laura Bennett. "You can't talk to me like that," he snapped. "This is a misunderstanding. My son was filming himself disrespecting a national monument." Laura cut in, her voice steady but sharp. "Throwing an object at an active guard? Crossing a restricted barrier? That's not a misunderstanding. That's a deliberate act. And here, deliberate acts have consequences." Lauren stepped in then, clutching her purse with white-knuckled hands. "He's only 13. He didn't mean any harm. You can't treat him like some criminal." Laura's gaze shifted to her, the way a teacher looks at a parent who insists their child couldn't possibly be failing. "Ma'am, age doesn't erase disrespect. This isn't about punishment, it's about principle." The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. Someone whispered, "They're lucky it's just security talking to them." Another voice muttered, "If I'd tried that as a kid, my parents would have tanned my hide right here." Tyler shifted from foot to foot, glancing around for an ally in the sea of glares. His eyes caught on the Marine Corps pin again. The older woman hadn't moved, but her gaze stayed locked on him, steady and unflinching. It made his stomach twist in a way he didn't like. Laura turned toward her team. "Escort them to the security office." The Graysons were led away, a long path through the parted crowd. Camera phones followed them like heat-seeking missiles. Jonathan kept his jaw tight, as though pretending this wasn't happening could somehow make it go away. Lauren walked stiffly, her lips pressed thin. Tyler dragged his feet, wishing, more than he'd admit, that he could sink into the ground and disappear. Inside the security office, the air was cool but carried the faint scent of old paper and polished wood. Photos of Arlington's history lined the walls, black and white images of soldiers, presidents, and grieving families standing before the tomb of the unknown soldier. The silent weight of history seemed to fill every inch of the small space. Colonel Margaret Hayes was already there, waiting. Silver hair pulled into a tight bun, crisp uniform adorned with decades of earned honors, she had the kind of presence that made even seasoned politicians stand straighter. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Mr. and Mrs. Grayson," she began, her voice even but heavy with authority, "your son committed assault on a federal officer and defiled one of the most sacred sites in the country. This is not a tourist attraction for TikTok. This tomb represents every man and woman who gave their life for this country, many without even their names remembered. And your son treated it like a stage for a joke." Jonathan leaned forward, his businessman's tone slipping into the conversation like a tool he'd used to close countless deals. "Colonel, I understand you're upset. But I'm sure we can work this out quietly. I'll cover any damages. I'll write a donation check to the cemetery." Margaret's eyes hardened. "This isn't about money, Mr. Grayson. You can't buy respect. And you can't buy your son out of learning it." Lauren let out an exasperated sigh. "He's 13. He didn't." "He's 13, Margaret interrupted, "and he's old enough to know the difference between right and wrong. This wasn't a lapse in judgment. This was arrogance, plain and simple. And judging by your reactions, it's not hard to see where he gets it." Tyler felt the sting of that line even more than his parents did. He wanted to protest, to say something clever to reclaim control, but for the first time, his mind came up empty. His phone, his shield, his stage, his audience, was in pieces back on the pavement. Without it, he felt smaller, less sure of himself. Margaret sat back. "We're not filing charges, not yet. But this doesn't get brushed under the rug. I'm calling in someone who deals with cases like this. Your son's going to learn what this place means, and until that happens, you're not leaving Arlington." The words hit Jonathan like a financial report full of red numbers. "You can't detain us. We have a flight to catch." "You'll catch a different one," Margaret replied without missing a beat. An hour later, Dr. Emily Carter walked into the room. She wasn't in uniform, but she carried herself like someone who'd earned the right to be there. A psychologist specializing in working with troubled teens, she had a reputation for stripping away excuses until the truth stood bare. She sat across from Tyler in a smaller side room, a notepad balanced on one knee. "Tyler," she said, her tone calm but direct, "why did you do what you did out there?" He shrugged, avoiding her eyes. "I was bored. That guy was just standing there like a robot. I thought it'd be funny." Emily's pen hovered above the page. "Funny? Do you know what that tomb represents?" Tyler shrugged again. "Some dead soldiers, I guess." Emily leaned forward slightly. "Those dead soldiers gave their lives so you could have the freedom to stand here and act like a fool. That guard, Ethan, was honoring them. And you decided to make a spectacle out of it. You treated this place like your personal playground." Tyler shifted in his seat. "It was just a soda can. I didn't hurt him." "It's not about hurting him," Emily said. "It's about disrespect. That tomb isn't just marble, it's a promise. A promise that we remember, no matter what. And when you mocked it, you told everyone watching that promise didn't matter." For the first time, Tyler didn't have a comeback. He sat there, picking at a loose thread on his sleeve, feeling the weight of her words. Somewhere deep down, a small crack formed in the wall he'd built around himself. Outside the room, the media storm was intensifying. #ArlingtonKid was now the top trending hashtag on Twitter. Clips of the soda toss, the phone drop, and Laura's confrontation were on Instagram and TikTok, racking up millions of views. News outlets from CNN to Fox were running the footage alongside debates about privilege, parenting, and patriotism. Jonathan's PR team was in meltdown mode. His company's stock was dipping. Lauren's social media had been flooded with thousands of comments, most unprintable, until she set her accounts to private. Inside that quiet office, though, Emily had already made her recommendation. He needs more than a lecture. He needs to live the lesson. I propose 4 weeks of community service here at Arlington. He'll work with the grounds crew, meet veterans, and learn about the tomb's history. If he refuses, we escalate to juvenile authorities. Jonathan's mouth fell open. 4 weeks? Are you insane? He's a kid, not a criminal. Margaret didn't blink. Be grateful we're offering an alternative to formal charges. Tyler just stared at the floor. 4 weeks at a cemetery felt like a death sentence in its own right. But something in Emily's steady gaze told him this wasn't negotiable. The first morning of community service began before sunrise, when the cemetery still felt like a cool breath against the heat waiting in the wings. A mist clung to the rolling lawns, filtering the world into soft shapes of marble and shadow. Tyler stood outside the maintenance building in borrowed work boots and an Arlington Grounds Department t-shirt one size too big. His designer sneakers were at the hotel, clean and pointless. These boots were stiff and smelled like oil and sweat, and there was something unglamorous about the way the laces bit into his ankles. A week ago, he would have posted a story moaning about manual labor. Now, there was no audience. His phone lay in a plastic evidence bag marked with his name. A man with a sun-worn face and forearms like knotted rope pushed through the door with a squeal of hinges. "You Grayson?" he asked, voice like gravel in a coffee can. "Yeah," Tyler said, bracing for derision. "I'm Reyes," the man said, jutting his chin. "Army, retired. I run the grounds crew. You show up on time, work hard, you and me won't have problems. You act cute, I'll have you hauling wet sod until your shoulders learn manners." Tyler nodded. He didn't trust his mouth not to make things worse. Reyes tossed him a pair of gloves. "Rule 1, hands on the work, eyes on the names. You treat every stone like it's your own blood." They started with the basics: leaf blowers before the heat rose, plastic bags for trash, a cart rattling over the gravel path. The first bag felt humiliatingly light: wind-crumpled maps, a bent brochure, a straw wrapper. But each thing came out of a human hand that had forgotten, in a sacred place, to be careful. Every pause at a headstone felt like an apology. Reyes would kneel, brush pine needles away, and say the name aloud. Sergeant James Whitlow. He'd straighten, eyes on the dates. 67 to 03. Then he'd nod, a single respectful dip. "Welcome home, Sarge." By mid-morning, Tyler's shirt had pasted itself to his back. Blisters bloomed along the base of his thumbs. When he stopped to shake his hands out, he caught Reyes watching him, not with contempt, but with a measuring patience that stung even more. "Water break," Reyes said. Then headstones. Headstones meant a bucket, a soft brush, and a quiet lane shaded by old oaks. Reyes demonstrated: wet, gentle circles, never scraping, never scrubbing like you were erasing. "The marble keeps the story," he said. "We don't rewrite it. We remind it to be seen." At the first stone, Tyler read the letters under his breath. Marcus L. Downey. Below, "Beloved Father." The dates were too close together, 31 years between them. He swallowed, dipped the brush, and worked in careful loops. When the dirt loosened, the name gleamed a little. A car door thunked in the lot beyond the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a bugle cut the morning like a thread of gold. "You ever been to a funeral?" Reyes asked. "My great-grandma's," Tyler said. "She was 98. Reyes nodded. "That's a life. Most of these, didn't get what 98 gives you." You understand why the guard didn't break, now? Tyler kept brushing. The cola on Ethan's boot, the glassy noise of his phone hitting stone, both sounds darted like fish through his chest. I get, more than I did. Keep getting, Reyes said. We got 4 weeks. The first week passed in heat and repetition. Raking pine straw. Straightening the small flags that the wind tilted off their little wooden spines. Carrying water to an old man in a wheelchair who came every Tuesday to sit with his wife. Tyler learned the cemetery's practical language, the map grid, the sections, the way the hill threw shade in the late afternoon, and the cemetery's secret language, which birds nested in the sycamores, where the grass always grew patchy, the exact rhythm of silence just before the changing of the guard began. The second morning, as they loaded the cart with buckets and brushes, Reyes nodded toward a woman sitting on a bench near section 46. She wore a navy cardigan despite the heat, a pin of a small red cross winking at her lapel. That's Miss Thompson, he said. World War II nurse. She'll talk your ear off if you give her the chance, and you should give her the chance. When their route brought them near, Miss Thompson lifted a hand. Her skin was as thin as tissue, but her eyes were ocean clear. Good morning, young man, she said to Tyler. Have you got a minute for an old story? Reyes tipped his hat. He's got as long as you want, ma'am. She patted the bench. Sit. Tyler did, the wood warm under his knees. Normandy, she said, almost to herself. They didn't look like heroes when they came in, you know. Just boys. I held one's hand right here. She touched the web between thumb and forefinger. He kept saying, I didn't think it would be like this. I told him, nothing is ever like we think. He said, tell my mama I didn't cry. He hadn't, but I did, after. There were too many to cry for then. Tyler found himself staring at her hand, the one that had held a stranger across an ocean and 70 years. I'm sorry, he said, because there was nothing else that fit. She smiled, soft, unresentful. You don't have to be sorry. You have to be worthy. The word sat with him all day like a coin under the tongue, heavy, metallic, transforming the taste of everything else. That afternoon, Reyes brought him around the back of the Memorial Amphitheater, where the tomb guard's prep room hummed with the low buzz of clippers and the faint chemical scent of polish. We're dropping these off, Reyes said, nodding to the crates of clean towels in their cart. Keep your hands in your pockets and your opinions in your head. Inside, ritual was a living creature, small, precise movements in a white-tiled space with mirrors that showed you not yourself but your imperfections. A guard at a workbench was burnishing a belt buckle until it reflected like a drop of mercury. Another, in a sleeveless undershirt, shaved the tiniest ladder of stubble from his forearm. A sergeant checked a rack of uniforms with a glance that could weigh dust. Ethan wasn't there. Tyler didn't know whether he was disappointed or relieved. 21, Reyes said quietly, as they rolled the cart back into the hallway. That's the number you'll see everywhere. 21 steps. 21 seconds pause. 21 is the highest military honor. You don't break 21 unless there's a threat. The guard didn't break for you. He broke for the tomb, before you broke it more. Tyler nodded. Words were dangerous here, they scuffed surfaces that shouldn't be scuffed. In the evenings, Dr. Emily checked in with him in a small office off the main administrative building, the window framed by a holly tree where birds flickered like coins being flipped. She never talked down to him. She never let him off the hook. Tell me the names you remember, she'd say at the end of each day, and he'd list them: Downey, Whitlow, C. Park, S. Ramirez, Lee, B. O'Malley. Good, she'd say. Remembering is a muscle. Keep working it. His parents came the third night. Jonathan wore his apology like a suit, well-tailored, expensive, and easier to notice than to trust. Lauren seemed smaller, not in stature but in insistence. She hugged him too quickly and pulled back to study him, maybe expecting a dramatized plea to be rescued. "We've spoken with the lawyers," Jonathan said carefully, as if the word itself might shatter something. The colonel is very firm. But we'll make this right. I've set up meetings. A donation. PR is." Reyes appeared in the doorway behind Tyler and cleared his throat. Jonathan's speech unraveled on the spot, like a thread caught on a nail. "Mr. Grayson," Reyes said. "This isn't a spill you can mop with a check. Your boy's working. Let him finish the work." Jonathan bristled, then deflated, just a little. "We just wanted to see him." "You saw him," Reyes said, nodding. "He'll be here again in the morning at 5. After they left, Tyler sat on the bench outside the maintenance shed longer than he meant to, breathing in the cutgrass smell and the faint sweetness of crepe myrtle. For the first time, he admitted that the thought of his father fixing everything made him feel something other than relief. It made him feel cheated, of what, he couldn't quite name. On day 4, a heat advisory crawled across local news screens, promising an afternoon that would shiver the air above the asphalt. Reyes sent half the crew to the shaded sections and kept the rest near water stations. Tyler was assigned to flags again. It had seemed mindless the first time: straighten, press the base deeper into the soil, move on. But somewhere between section 60 and the long sweep toward the tomb, the rhythm changed. He stopped thinking about finishing and started thinking about each person the flag shadowed. One was just a last name and 2 dates, no beloved, or father, or daughter on the line between. He imagined a man who'd never married, who had loved this country anyway. Another had a Star of David carved at the top. The next, a cross. Somewhere near the slope, a small stone wore the emblem of a crescent. The sameness of the marble made the differences seem less like divisions and more like lines in a single page. Around mid-morning, a faint stir moved through the crowd ahead. Tyler glanced up, tourists bunching near the rope line, the particular hush that wasn't really silence but people remembering how to be quiet. The changing of the guard. Reyes glanced at his watch and jerked his head. "You should see this from the side. Not from the front like a show. From the work." They slipped behind the marble balustrade where you could see the sentinel approach, count the steps with him, feel the weight in the pivot of his heel. The rifle angled. The cap brim cut a clean line against the sky. The sentinel's face was expressionless, but not empty. It held an attention so complete that it seemed like a wall against which time itself softened. 21 steps. Turn. 21 seconds. Turn. Tyler found himself counting without counting, the numbers stitching a seam in his chest that felt, somehow, like it had always been there and he had only just touched it. Halfway through the sequence, a child's cry rang out, somewhere to the left, where a mother had bent to pick up a dropped pacifier. The sentinel did not flick his eyes. The rhythm did not slip. But Tyler noticed, for the first time, that the guards' hands weren't rigid. They moved with minute, living corrections, balancing the rifle, adjusting for the smallest tilt in the stone. Control didn't mean stiffness. It meant choosing, 1,000 times per minute, to be exact. When the relief guard approached, the exchange happened with the solemn economy of those who know their movements have been rehearsed so often they are no longer only steps but language. The sergeant checked the weapon with a motion so clean it felt like a blessing. The relieved guard passed, boots whispering, and disappeared into the cool mouth of the amphitheater. The new sentinel, taller, younger, with a face like a line drawing, took his first measured strides. As he did, Reyes murmured, "First week on the line. You can see it in the shoulders. He'll be marble by August." They watched a full cycle, then another. When they stepped back into the sun, Tyler blinked at how bright and ordinary the world seemed after the ritual's silvered quiet. He looked down at his hands, at the half-moons of dirt that had gathered under his chewed nails, and felt something he didn't have a word for yet. Not guilt exactly. Not pride. A junction of the two. A readiness to look up when the counting started and count with it. That afternoon, as they loaded pruned branches into the bed of a truck, Reyes asked, almost casual, "Your folks mention any service in your family?" "My grandpa," Tyler said. "Marine. He doesn't talk about it much." "My dad. I don't think he asked a lot." Reyes's mouth flattened. "You should ask." Tyler nodded. "I will." The second week brought a new hardness to the work and a new ease to the silence. The blisters toughened into small shields. The morning mist lifted earlier each day. Tyler fell into a rhythm of sweat and water breaks, of names and dates and slow, careful circles of a brush. When Emily asked him one evening what had changed, he surprised himself by answering without a shrug. "It's not that I feel watched anymore," he said. "It's that I feel expected." "By who?" Emily asked. "By them," he said, and gestured out the window toward thousands of white stones, each one a small horizon. On Friday of week 2, Reyes sent him with another crewman, a quiet man named Ash, to clear debris after a storm bent a tree limb down across a path. As they stacked the cut sections along the curb, a couple approached, tourists by the way their eyes bounced between the map and the scenery, not finding the gravity line that locals learned to keep. "Excuse me," the woman said, "is it true there's a guard every hour? Even at night? Even in bad weather?" "Every hour," Ash said. "Every day. Since 1937. "Why?" she asked, wonder slipping toward skepticism. Ash's face didn't change. "Because the unknowns don't stop being unknown when it storms." The woman nodded, chastened by something she hadn't expected to be chastened by on a vacation. When the path was clear, Ash slid the last segment of limb into place and dusted his palms. "You're not the first kid to act a fool at the tomb," he said to Tyler out of nowhere. "But you're one of the few who ends up learning her language." "Her?" Tyler asked. Ash tapped his chest with 2 fingers, a soldier's small salute. "We call the tomb she sometimes. Because she's a keeper and a burden and a memory, all wrapped in stillness. She forgives, but not quickly." That evening, Tyler sat at the small desk in his temporary room and stared at the sheet of paper Emily had given him. "Write 3 things you didn't know you were grateful for." The pen hovered. He wrote, shadows, because the heat would have destroyed him without them. Water, because every sip felt like choosing to keep going. He hesitated, then added, someone who didn't move when I tried to make him, and felt the word grateful settle in his sternum like a warm coin. He almost folded the page, then turned it over and wrote another line, I'm going to call Grandpa tomorrow. He underlined it. Twice. The call took place the next afternoon, after his shift and a shower that finally dislodged the dust in his hairline. His grandfather answered on the 3rd ring. Ty. The voice was roughened by age but steady. It had the same calm timbre that used to quiet rooms at Christmas when the old man tapped the glass and smiled. Hey, Grandpa, Tyler said, suddenly conscious of the way this greeting used to come between gaming sessions, tossed like a frisbee. I'm working at Arlington for a few weeks. There was a pause. I saw the news, his grandfather said gently. I was waiting for your call. Tyler flinched, not at the words, but at the softness. I messed up. You did, his grandfather said. But you're doing the right kind of next. Were you ever here? Tyler asked, then rushed on. I mean, I know you were a Marine. Did you ever? Section 12, his grandfather said. Friends of mine. I visit when I can. Silence pulsed, not empty but full of things that didn't belong to a boy. Tyler filled it clumsily. I saw the changing, up close. 21 steps. 21 seconds. It's like counting is a way of saying thank you. His grandfather chuckled, but it was a sound with water in it. That's one way of putting it. Grandpa, Tyler said, the word a little boy's and a young man's at once. Can you tell me a story? From back then? A longer pause. Tomorrow, his grandfather said. I'll drive down. You can walk me to section 12, and I'll tell you there. When Tyler hung up, his heart thudded with a new kind of anticipation. He looked out the small window at the cemetery, silvering in the late light, and felt, maybe for the first time, like he wanted time to slow down so the day could arrive on a clean page. Reyes knocked once and opened the door. 5 a.m., he said, as always. Then he saw Tyler's face and, in a rare concession, softened his tone. You okay, kid? My grandpa's coming tomorrow, Tyler said. Marine. He's going to show me section 12. Reyes nodded, something like approval passing like a shadow behind his eyes. Then you'll learn how stories land. How they land. Reyes tapped the doorframe. We don't tell them. They arrive. And when they do, you stand up straight. That night, Tyler dreamed of white stones moving like boats across water, each one leaving a ripple of names. He woke before his alarm, lay still, and counted, not sheep, but steps, 21, 21, 21, until the number worked its quiet repair beneath his ribs. The morning would bring his grandfather and, with him, a line stretching backwards beyond any hashtag, any trending topic, any easy story Ty had ever told himself about who he was and what he was owed. And somewhere beyond the morning, he sensed, was Ethan, still a silhouette, still a shore he had not yet reached, waiting with a story of his own that would change the map Tyler thought he was reading. The morning his grandfather was coming, Tyler felt an uncharacteristic restlessness as he pulled on his work shirt. It wasn't the familiar annoyance of being told to wake up early, it was something heavier, knotted with a strange sense of duty. By the time he and Reyes finished the early flag checks, his eyes kept flicking toward the main gate. At 9:02, a dusty blue pickup rolled in, slow and steady. The man who climbed out wore khaki slacks, a simple button-down, and a weathered Marine Corps ball cap. His back was a little bent, his steps deliberate, but there was an unmistakable firmness in the way he carried himself. Morning, Ty, his grandfather said, voice like warm gravel. Morning, Grandpa, Tyler replied, suddenly aware of how much taller he'd gotten since the last time they'd stood this close. Reyes approached, tipped his cap. Mr. Grayson, he said, I'll leave him in your hands for the next hour. Then, to Tyler, make it count. They walked without hurry toward section 12. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and summer blossoms, somewhere a mower droned in the distance. Tyler glanced at the headstones as they passed, each one a silent witness. His grandfather broke the quiet. Your dad ever tell you why I don't talk about my service much? Tyler shook his head. No. I guess I never asked. You didn't, his grandfather agreed, and he didn't either. They stopped beside a row of smaller stones, neat and uniform. These are mine, he said softly. Tyler looked at the names. Corporal James O'Rourke. Sergeant Daniel Lee. Lance Corporal Miguel Alvarez. Each stone bore dates that told the same brutal story, young men, gone far too soon. They were my brothers, his grandfather said. We were just kids, really. Younger than your dad is now when we shipped out. And when it was over. I came home. They didn't. Tyler swallowed, feeling the heat rise behind his eyes. Were you here when they? His grandfather nodded. I carried one of them myself. And when I see the guard out there, holding that line without flinching, it's not just ceremony to me. It's a promise. That we remember them every minute of every day. They stood in silence for a long moment. Tyler's eyes drifted to the carved words on one stone, he stood for honor. It felt like a weight in his chest, something that couldn't be laughed off or brushed away. You crossed that rope line, his grandfather said finally, and you didn't understand what it meant. But now you've seen where it leads. It leads here. To people who earned the right to be remembered. I'm sorry, Tyler said quietly. Not just to you. To them. To everyone here. His grandfather's gaze softened. Then keep showing it. Words fade, but how you carry yourself, that stays. When they parted ways at the gate, Tyler felt like the visit had left an invisible mark on him, like a new stripe he hadn't earned through rank but through realization. The following week, his days began blending into a rhythm that felt less like punishment and more like purpose. He polished plaques, trimmed hedges, and sometimes just stood still to listen when a veteran told him a story. One day, Emily met him during lunch under the shade of a sprawling oak. "You're quieter these days," she observed. "I'm thinking more," Tyler admitted. About stuff that's bigger than me." Emily smiled faintly. "That's a good shift. You know, Ethan Caldwell, the guard you disrespected, hasn't spoken publicly about what happened. But he's agreed to meet you before your program ends. How do you feel about that?" Tyler's stomach tightened. "Nervous. Like. I don't know if I deserve the meeting." "That's not for you to decide," Emily said. "What matters is whether you show him that you've changed." 2 days later, Tyler got his first real glimpse of Ethan up close. It was a humid afternoon, and the changing of the guard had just ended. Ethan, now off duty, emerged from the prep building in a pressed uniform shirt and dark slacks, still carrying the air of discipline like a second skin. His boots were spotless, new ones, perhaps, but Tyler's eyes flicked instinctively to them, remembering the cola stain he'd caused. For a moment, Ethan's gaze locked on his. Not cold, not warm, just unreadable. Then he turned and walked toward the admin wing. That night, Tyler barely slept. He kept replaying the image of Ethan standing perfectly still while the soda dripped down his boot. The memory no longer felt like a victory from a viral prank, it felt like the opening scene of a lesson that had taken him weeks to begin understanding. On the final week of his program, Emily set the meeting. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., she told him. "Colonel Hayes will be there. It's your chance to close this chapter the right way." Tyler nodded, but his mind was already racing. What do you say to someone whose job you disrespected? Someone whose grief you trampled on without even knowing? That night, he sat at the desk and started writing. It wasn't for show, not for social media. Just a few lines on paper. "Ethan, I didn't see you then. I saw a uniform, a prop, something to get likes. But I see you now. I know what the tomb means. And I know you carry someone with you every step. I'm sorry I disrespected that." He folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket, unsure if he'd ever read it aloud. The morning of the meeting dawned clear, with a sharp blue sky and the sound of flag halyards clinking in a mild breeze. Tyler woke early, dressed neatly, and walked to the admin building with a knot in his stomach. He didn't know it yet, but what Ethan was about to share would turn his understanding from something abstract into something deeply personal. The admin building's conference room wasn't big, but it carried the same gravity as the cemetery outside. A framed flag hung on the wall, its fabric faded from years of light, and next to it, a black and white photograph of a changing of the guard from decades ago. Tyler sat at one end of the table, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles showed white. Emily was beside him, her calm presence acting like an anchor. Colonel Hayes stood near the window, arms crossed, her posture as rigid as her reputation. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound, until the door opened. Ethan Caldwell stepped inside. He was in civilian clothes now, a plain navy button-up and slacks, but he still moved with the economy and precision of a soldier. His sunglasses were gone, revealing steady hazel eyes that seemed to measure every inch of the room without needing to move. For a moment, he looked at Tyler, just looked. Tyler felt the weight of that gaze like a stone in his chest. Colonel Hayes gestured. "Ethan, thank you for coming. Tyler has something to say." Tyler's throat tightened, but he pulled the folded paper from his pocket. "I wrote this last night," he said, voice low. Because I didn't want to just wing it and screw it up again. He unfolded it, his hands trembling slightly. Ethan, I didn't see you then. I saw a uniform, a prop, something to get likes. But I see you now. I know what the tomb means. And I know you carry someone with you every step. I'm sorry I disrespected that. The words hung there. Tyler didn't dare look up right away. When he did, Ethan was studying him, not like a kid being measured for punishment, but like a soldier assessing whether a recruit could make it through training. Why'd you do it, kid? Ethan asked finally. His voice was quiet, but it had the kind of strength that didn't need volume. Tyler swallowed. Because I thought it would make me look cool online. I didn't think about you as a person, or about who you were honoring. I didn't think at all. Ethan nodded slightly. That's honest. Most people hide behind excuses. He stepped closer, resting his hands lightly on the back of a chair. My brother, Michael, was a soldier. We grew up together, did everything together. When I was 13, your age, he was 18 and about to deploy to Afghanistan. He promised he'd be back in a year. He didn't make it 6 months. The day I got the news, I swore I'd find a way to honor him for the rest of my life. He paused, his eyes steady on Tyler's. Every step I take at that tomb is for him, and for the thousands like him who never came home. When you threw that can, it wasn't just soda on my boots. It was disrespect on his memory. Tyler felt his ears burn. His voice came out hoarse. I get that now. I can't undo it. But I want to make it right. You've started, Ethan said. You did the work. You listened to the stories. That's more than most would have done. Colonel Hayes spoke up. Ethan, do you feel the program was enough? Ethan was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Yeah. He's different than the kid I saw that day. His gaze shifted back to Tyler. But change isn't a one-month thing. It's every day, deciding who you want to be when nobody's filming. Tyler nodded. I will. I promise. Ethan reached across the table. Tyler stood and shook his hand. The grip was firm, not crushing, not soft. Real. For the first time since the soda can hit the ground, Tyler felt like the weight in his chest was shifting. Not gone, but lighter, as if someone had agreed to help him carry it. Emily smiled faintly. I think that's a good place to end. But as they stepped outside into the bright Arlington sunlight, Ethan called after Tyler. Hey, kid. Tyler turned. Ethan's expression was unreadable again, but his words landed with quiet force. Don't just remember this as the day you said sorry. Remember it as the day you decided to mean it. Tyler didn't fully understand yet, but he knew he'd never forget those words. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the media, still obsessed with #ArlingtonKid, was about to spin this moment into something bigger. And it would test whether his change was real, or just a performance. The next morning, Tyler woke to a knock on his temporary room door. Reyes's voice came through, low but firm. Kid, you're on TV. Tyler swung his legs out of bed, heart thumping. He opened the door to find Reyes holding a battered tablet. On the screen was a news broadcast, one of the morning shows that usually covered politics, weather, and celebrity fluff. But now, his face was there. The footage rolled, Tyler, shaking Ethan's hand in the conference room. A news ticker read, #ArlingtonKid meets tomb guard in private reconciliation. The anchor's voice was smooth, almost too smooth. What began as a moment of shocking disrespect at the tomb of the unknown soldier has turned into what some are calling a redemption story. After 4 weeks of community service at Arlington, Tyler Grayson, son of tech CEO Jonathan Grayson, met with tomb guard Ethan Caldwell to apologize. Witnesses say the meeting was sincere, but public opinion is divided. Was it genuine, or was it PR? The screen cut to a split segment, one side showing Tyler at work, raking leaves, polishing headstones, the other side showing him smirking in the original soda-throwing clip. Reyes paused the video and looked at him. You can't control what they say out there. Only what you do in here. Tyler nodded, but the knot in his stomach tightened. It just feels like no matter what I do, people are going to think I'm faking it. Reyes shrugged. Then prove them wrong. Not with a statement. With a pattern. That day, Tyler worked harder than he had in weeks. He stopped waiting for assignments, he asked what needed doing. He carried water to a group of elderly visitors without being told. He even took it upon himself to fix a line of flags along the walkway when he noticed two leaning. Reyes didn't say much, but Tyler caught the slight curve at the corner of his mouth once or twice. Mid-afternoon, Emily found him in the shade of the amphitheater steps. You've seen the coverage? Yeah, Tyler said, wiping his forehead. Good. Now ignore it. There's something I want you to see tonight. Be here at 2300. 11 p.m.? Tyler blinked. She smiled faintly. Some lessons you can only learn in the quiet hours. That night, the cemetery was different. The air was cooler, the grounds hushed in a way Tyler had never experienced during the day. The floodlights around the tomb cast long, unwavering shadows. And there, pacing in perfect precision, was Ethan. No crowd. No cameras. Just a sentinel keeping the watch. They stood off to the side, far enough to avoid breaking the sanctity of the space. Emily whispered, every hour. Every weather. No matter what. You've seen the ceremony during the day. But at night, it's not for show. It's for them. Tyler watched, the rhythm of Ethan's steps hypnotic. 21 steps. 21 seconds. Turn. Repeat. Not once did his focus waver, even when a breeze rattled the flagpole chains. Something clicked. This wasn't performance, it was devotion. A promise kept when no one's watching. As they walked back toward the admin building, Tyler asked quietly, how long has he been doing this? 5 years, Emily said. And he'll keep doing it as long as he's able. Because for him, the fallen are never off duty. That night, Tyler couldn't sleep. He kept picturing Ethan's silhouette under the lights, repeating those steps in the dark. The image lodged itself deep, like a seed that would only grow in time. The next morning, when Reyes asked who wanted to volunteer for the less pleasant job, cleaning the trash receptacles along the far perimeter, Tyler's hand went up first. No one told him to. No one thanked him. But for the first time, he realized he didn't need them to. By the final weekend of his program, news crews had all but camped outside Arlington, hoping to capture the closing chapter of the #Arlington Kid saga. A few reporters shouted questions as Tyler passed by on his way to work. Do you think you've redeemed yourself? Was the apology staged? He didn't answer. Not because he was afraid, but because he understood now, it wasn't about them. Inside, Reyes clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder. That's how you start making it stick. You keep your head down and your work up. Tyler nodded. But part of him wondered, what would happen when he went home? Would he still carry this change, or would it fade once the uniforms, the marble, and the silence were gone? He didn't have the answer yet. But the next day, the final day, would force him to decide. The last morning of Tyler's community service arrived with the first hint of autumn in the air. The oppressive heat had broken overnight, leaving the grounds cool and bright under a flawless sky. Tyler dressed in his now well-worn work shirt and boots, items that had once felt like punishment but now felt like a uniform he'd earned in his own way. Reyes was waiting by the maintenance shed, sipping from a thermos. Last day, he said. Means two things, you work it like the first, and you leave it better than you found it. Tyler nodded. Got it. Their task for the morning was in section 60, where rows of small flags fluttered in the crisp breeze. Tyler moved from stone to stone, pressing each flag deeper into the soil, straightening it until it stood in perfect alignment. The work was quiet, almost meditative, until a sharp voice cut through the calm. "Hey, kid!" Tyler looked up to see a group of tourists near the rope line. A boy around his age, maybe a little older, was holding up his phone, smirking. "Isn't that the Arlington kid? Dude, throw something. Let's see if the guard moves." Laughter rippled through the group. The boy pulled a crumpled water bottle from his backpack and shook it toward Tyler. "Come on, make it viral." A month ago, Tyler might have jumped at the chance. Now, the idea hit him like the taste of something sour. He glanced toward the tomb in the distance, where the sentinel's measured steps continued without pause. The rope line glinted in the sunlight, a thin barrier that meant everything. "No," Tyler said flatly. The boy laughed. "What, scared?" Tyler walked toward them, not aggressive, but with the kind of steady confidence Reyes had drilled into him. "That guard's not there for you to mess with. He's there for people who gave everything. Show some respect." The smirk faltered. "Relax, it's just a joke." "It's not a joke here," Tyler said, his voice firm. "You think it's funny? Go somewhere else. Not here." A veteran in the nearby crowd, wearing a faded army cap, gave a small nod. The tourists muttered among themselves and drifted away. Reyes had been watching from a distance. When Tyler returned to the flags, he said simply, "That's what carrying it looks like. Not just here, but everywhere you go." By noon, Tyler's work was done. Emily met him by the admin building, handing him a small envelope. Inside was a certificate of completion for his service at Arlington, signed by Colonel Hayes. But beneath it was something else, a folded piece of paper. He opened it to find a short note in Ethan's precise handwriting. "You kept your word. Keep it every day. 21 steps, 21 seconds, no matter where you are." Tyler read it twice, then tucked it carefully into his pocket. His parents arrived to pick him up. Jonathan was quieter than Tyler had ever seen him, Lauren's smile tentative. As they walked toward the gates, his father said, "You ready to get home?" Tyler looked back one last time. The sentinel was there, rifle on his shoulder, pacing in perfect rhythm under the wide blue sky. "Yeah," Tyler said. "But I'm not leaving this behind." Later, when a reporter caught them at the parking lot and asked, "So, Tyler, have you redeemed yourself?" he didn't hesitate. "That's not up to me to say," he replied. "All I can do is keep earning it." The video clip of that moment would be shared almost as widely as the soda-throwing incident. But this time, the comments told a different story. Some still doubted him, but others saw the change in his posture, his tone, his eyes. In the weeks that followed, Tyler started a small blog where he wrote about the people he'd met at Arlington, Miss Thompson and her Normandy memories, Reyes and his patient toughness, his grandfather's quiet pride. He didn't post for likes, he posted so others his age might understand what he'd been lucky enough to learn the hard way. And every now and then, when he was walking home from school or lying awake at night, he'd count, not sheep, not minutes, but 21 slow, deliberate steps in his mind. A rhythm of respect. A promise kept. Because once you've seen what some things cost, you can't go back to pretending they're free. Tyler's story is a reminder that respect isn't about what you say when the world is watching, it's about what you do when it isn't. Like Ethan told him, some promises are kept one step at a time, over and over, until they become part of who you are. And if there's one thing to take away, it's this: some places, and some sacrifices, deserve our very best, always. If this story moved you, subscribe to True Echo for more powerful, real-life inspired stories. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and let us know in the comments, what does honor mean to you?